Hello students, welcome to my class. This is Professor Vincent Osaya and this is the presentation of part 2 of chapter 6, merchandise inventory. Again, we are talking about accounting principles relative to merchandise inventory, how to apply them in order for us to prepare the related financial statements. Okay, now the last time in wrapping up part 1 of the presentation, we talked about the importance of determining ending merchandise inventory and cost of goods sold. Now, this slide basically summarizes everything that we discussed in terms of cost of goods sold and ending inventory. Now, moving along, how are merchandise inventory costs determined under a perpetual inventory system is still the question. Now, the example that I just gave you, the very simple example that I just gave you in part 1 presentation was very simple and straightforward. We purchased 10 units, we sold 8, we have 2 left. The question is, what is the cost of the 2 left? Simple. Each cost us $10. So the 2 units left obviously cost us $20. So the ending inventory is $20. And of course, cost of goods sold, like we explained, we sold 8. We paid $10 a unit. So the cost of the 8 units that we sold was $80. Now, here is the challenge. The challenge is if there is a change for different groups of inventory, it becomes more difficult to decide how much to assign to the ending inventory. So let me go ahead and give you a simple example here. And okay, so here we go. Let's assume that in January we purchased 100 units at $10. So this is the cost, all right? So the cost is $10 a unit, and in January we purchased 100 units. So we wind up paying $1,000 for the 100 units. Now, in March, we purchased additional 100 units. Now, this time at $20 a unit. Then we paid $2,000 for the 100 units purchased in March. So altogether, for this 2-month period, we have 200 units available for sale. Now, guess what? At the end of March, I mean, it took me, this quarter, January through March. At the end of March, guess what happened? We have only 10 units left. Why? Because we sold 190 units, so we have only 10 units left. So you need to cash this. The question is, how much did we pay for the 10 units left? We sold 190, we have 10 left. Here is the challenge. The challenge is, these 10 units left come from which batch? Do they come from January batch? And January batch, each unit cost us $10, or do they come from March batch, which cost us $20 a unit? So look at, if we assume that January 100 units were sold first, and another 90 units were sold from this batch, therefore the 10 units left came from March batch, or the batch of the units that were purchased in March. So guess what happened? Therefore, the ending inventory in terms of the cost, 10 units left, will be at what? $20. So we now have $200 as the cost of ending inventory. If we assume that the 10 units left came from this batch. So the assumption here is first in, first out. What does that mean? Meaning the first one that we started with were sold first. Therefore, the 10 units left came from the last batch. So now, let's assume that our assumption is we sold the 100 units that we have bought in March 1st, and the 10 units left came from January batch. In such circumstance, the cost of the 10 units left would be $10 a piece. That would be $100. Take a look at this. If we are talking about millions of dollars, then you are looking at difference of $100 million in terms of the cost of the inventory that you have left. The number of inventory is pretty much the same, but the assumption as to which one did you sell first, if it is FIFO or LIFO, meaning first in, first out, or last in, first out, then the ending inventory amount would vary. With the same token, let's take a look at the cost of goods sold. Same thing with cost of goods sold. We sold 190 units. If the assumption is these units were sold first, then the cost of goods sold would consist of 190 multiplied by $10 each, 100 multiplied by $10 each, then additional 90 multiplied by 20. So we are going to demonstrate this in a minute. So the point that I'm trying to get across here is when the cost of inventory that you bought over a period of time are different, then it becomes a little bit of a challenge to decide which dollar to assign the ending inventory and cost of goods sold, like we just demonstrated. Now, that being said, take a look at what happened. The accounting profession wound up coming up with 4 different methods, at least for the purpose of this class. We have more than 4, but at least 4 basic methods in determining the ending inventory and the cost of goods sold. So let's take a look at the method. Specific identification, first in, first out, last in, first out, weighted average. Now, what does that mean? Let's take a look at the first one, which is specific identification method. What is that? This method is used by companies that sell large ticket items, and they are very expensive, and we know exactly what's what. Look at one of those companies would be an automobile company or a car dealership. Now, what does that mean? Let's take a look at a quick example here. Let's assume that we have an auto dealership. The auto dealership have one BMW. The cost was $20,000. One Chevy for $10,000. One Ford for $15,000. Look at what happened. How many units? The auto dealership have 3 cars available to sell. At the end of the month, guess what? This is sold. How many cars do we have left? 2. What is the cost of these 2 cars left? clearly $30,000. There's no guess because the paperwork that we use to purchase every car in the parking lot, we have it, and we can easily determine the cost of ending inventory. With the same token, what is the cost of goods sold? We sold only one car. How much did we pay for that car that we sold? $15,000. So the cost of goods sold is $15,000. So that is what we mean by the specific identification method. We are able to identify specifically what was sold and what was left in terms of quantity and also in terms of dollars. So it's going to be very difficult for you to see this slide, but again, you have the PowerPoint presentation. Here is an example of a specific identification method. If you go through this, you find out that it's very simple and straightforward. There's no point of me illustrating this because it is not likely that you are going to be able to see. Moving along, let's take a look at the next method, which is first in, first out method. What does that mean? First in, first out, meaning the units that you bought first were sold first. All right? So first in, first out. Now, so the cost of goods sold is based on the oldest purchases. So, because the assumption is you sold the ones that you bought first. So the cost of goods sold will be associated with the ones that you started with. Now, the ending inventory would reflect the current replacement cost, meaning the ending inventory will reflect what you purchased last. All right. So that is the overview for first in, first out. And again, you can go through this table yourself to understand how that method works. Now let's take a look at the next method, last in, first out method. What is this? I mean, the assumption here is the inventory that we have bought or purchased last were sold first. All right, which is the opposite of FIFO. So take a look at just the opposite. So the cost of goods sold will closely reflect the current replacement, and the ending inventory will contain the oldest costing unit. Now, of course, this method will be used to lay off people in a union environment. If the company needs to lay off people, the ones that are hired most recently obviously get laid off before the senior staff. So last in, first out, pretty much the same thing. Now, again, this table will illustrate the last in, first out. You need to go through that very closely. Now, let's take a look at another method. This is the weighted average method. Okay, so the weighted average method simply take the weighted average per unit after each purchase. So the ending inventory and cost of goods sold is based on the weighted average per cost. So average cost is computed as follows. So we determine the cost of goods available for sale. So the cost of all the goods that we bought during the accounting period, we divide it by the number of units available. That will give us the weighted average cost per unit. And we use that to determine the cost of goods sold and the ending inventory. Here is an example here. All right, we started with 2 units, $350 per unit. The total cost is $700. Then on August 5th, we bought additional 4 units at $360 for a total of $140. At that point in time, we compute the average of what we have before and what we have now. We started with 2 units, we bought 4 more units, so we have 6 units altogether. So we compute the average and we came up with 356.67. So that is the average at that point in time. So if we were to determine the cost of goods sold or the ending inventory, we use that weighted average cost per unit to determine those two issues. So that is the conclusion of part 2 of this presentation.